Hi there. Hope you're doing well. We took a little hiatus. I took a little hiatus. I went on vacation for a few days down in San Diego with the Malacars and had a great time. But I haven't done a video about 1 Corinthians 13 in about a week, and so sorry about that lag there. We're jumping back in again in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. We've sort of talked about what we are like when we don't love, and then we've sort of started to define what love does, how it acts. Remember, when we talk about these verses, when it says love is patient, it doesn't say love is patience. It's just that when we have love in the heart for another person, it yields patience for that person. And so these are the fruits of love that come out of a heart that truly loves another person. So we've looked at love is patient, love is kind, it is not jealous, and now we're going to look at it at the fact that love is not boastful, or it doesn't brag, is what is the word that the New American Standard uses. It's a really good word for it. And so what we want to consider is, what does boasting look like when it's boasting about the self? When we love ourselves, we boast about ourselves, or versus loving another person and directing our praise toward another person. So this sort of idea is the self versus the other, and how love influences that when it comes to boasting. Well, what does it look like to boast about the self? Well, obviously we know this, right? We know people that are proud. They like to talk about themselves. They're always the center of every conversation. When that's happening in the heart or in the mouth, that shows that person isn't loving other people. And we see this a lot. This is very common. We all do this, actually, interestingly enough. We all tend to build ourselves up in what we say, or we have the ability to do that, and we are all constantly in danger of that. And what that looks like is that a person who's constantly sort of seeking attention, someone who's comparing themselves to others, they're thinking highly of themselves. That person is generally unwilling or very difficult to correct, to receive any kind of sort of correction or direction when it comes to their opinions, or what they think, or their opinion of themselves, more practically. They also flatter themselves and they flatter other people purely for the attention that provides for them. They tend to be a person who interrupts or intrudes on other people's conversations. All of that is just an act of boasting, of thinking more highly of oneself than we ought. And all of that ultimately shows itself out. The realities in the heart come out of the mouth, right? And so love for another person doesn't allow us to do that. When we love other people, and when we have love for other people in our hearts, we find ourselves sort of retreating, keeping ourselves inside, trying to fight against that boastfulness that's in our heart, that pride. When we love ourselves, we just let that stuff come out of our mouth, and we let it come out of our hearts, right? We don't fight that at all, because what are we doing? We're just bragging about our own abilities, our own selves, not considering others, considering only ourselves. So what does it look like when we're not boastful? Well, then we become others focused, right? In conversations, we're focused on other people. We're considering other people's needs in those moments, right? We're listening intently instead of just sort of venting our own minds and thoughts. We're listening to what other people are saying and seeking to understand them. We're giving genuine encouragement, right? We're directing people back to the Holy Spirit and to Christ. Genuine encouragement about how they can grow sometimes, but also about what they've done well, right? So we're not boasting about ourselves. We're actually encouraging, building another person up about the work of God in their life. And when we don't boast, when we're not boastful, we are more willing to receive correction and instruction, right? We don't get self-defensive, because it's hard to be self-defensive. And when we're not boastful, we also listen carefully, right? We don't interrupt, we don't intrude. We have a willingness to open our ears and hear from other people. So this is what it looks like to love and not boast, right? Love doesn't have boasting in the heart or in the mouth. Now, you might say, well, I don't generally talk about myself that much. I'm careful about that. I try to guard my tongue about talking too much. Maybe you're a very relatively quiet person. You don't talk about anything because you just don't talk that much. Well, this happens to all of us, right? But here's the thing. We can try to restrain those things on the outside. We can restrain our mouth, or maybe you're a quiet person and you sort of restrain your mouth all the time. But that doesn't mean you're necessarily not boastful, right? Because boasting is actually ultimately an issue of the heart. And what Paul is saying is that if we have love for a person, another person, or other people, then we can't hold that kind of boastful pride in our heart at the same time. These two things are mutually exclusive. And when we have boasting in our heart, when we're thinking about ourselves, when we want to vent our opinions, we're not actually loving the other person. We're just trying to make our opinions known. Solomon talks about this in the Proverbs. He says, a fool just wants to make his own opinion known. That's the definition of a person who isn't loving another person. But when we love other people, we want to open our ears, open our hearts, open our minds, understand what they're saying, hear them, and then build them up, sometimes by correcting them, and then sometimes also by just building them up in what the work of God has been in their life. I hope that's helpful for you.